It may sound counterintuitive, but COVID-19 could be the moment when the world has a second chance to get things right. Global injustice has been brutally exposed by the pandemic, the deepening wealth gap, the iniquity of healthcare, job insecurity, the worsening climate crisis, as well as unmasking leaders working for themselves rather than their citizens. But it's also shown in an unprecedented way that the world can act together and fast for the greater good. Now, Professor Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, believes a global reset is possible, and he's published a book about just that. And he joins me now. Hello there to you. Many thanks for joining us on the Global Conversation. Now, when you look at the state of the world right now, what's the first word that springs to your mind?
The word reset, I think, is appropriate because we are now still fighting the virus, but we can be rather optimistic after what we have seen with the announcement of vaccines. Now we have to think how to structure, how to design the post-corona era. And here, of course, the word reset comes to my mind because one thing is clear. We cannot come back to the old normal. We have to use this opportunity, as our parents and grandparents have done after the World War II, to really reflect on what went wrong and what could we do better.
What is your priority when you would, if you could, initiate this reset?
I think there's three dimensions, three priorities. The first one is to make the world more resilient because we definitively will have to face other surprises, black swans, as they are called, maybe different kinds of viruses. Second, we have to make the world more inclusive, fair, because we have seen that we have reached unsustainable degrees of levels of people who felt excluded. And finally, we have to make the world much greener. We finally have to put all our energy behind the decarbonization in order to avoid a major catastrophe in the future, of which we have, by the way, the first signs today.
Sadly, we do. Well, Professor, we're going to just touch on some of those issues you've raised. But first, I'd like to talk about the COVAX mechanism, because in some respects, when we look at this dark pool that COVID-19 has shed across the world, the COVAX mechanism is a bright spot because it's shown how wealthier nations can look after those who are facing more challenges. So how far does the experience of COVAX, which provides this immunization to poorer nations, inform your vision of a more inclusive society?
It's a bright spot because it reconfirms the effectiveness which can be achieved by having the right partners to work together. It's a systemic approach. We cannot solve our problems in the world by choosing simple approaches. And COVAX integrates the vaccines with the treatment, with testing, and with the right health policy approaches. So what we need in our world in the future is a much more systemic approach, because we know that everything is interdependent, everything is connected, not only on a global level, but if you take social, economic, political issues, they are all interconnected. So we need this systemic approach.
Well, Professor, then if we need this systemic approach, we've got a bit of a problem then when it comes to COVAX, for example. While the EU was quickly to back this, we have players like the US, Russia, China. They're not on board.
We may see the US also joining in the future. I think COVAX is also a very important step in order to make sure that the gap between, let's say, the developed countries and the emerging countries, the least developed countries, is not widening. We have seen that the blow of the virus to those countries is a particular let's say, serious and damaging one. And here with COVAX, we ensure that those people also can enjoy. And also, of course, on a European basis, with the much better cooperation compared to what we have seen in the past, we ensure that we do not increase unfairness in the distribution of all the remedies which we need in order to fight this virus.
You mentioned that the US might come on board, obviously, with the transition of power there with Biden, Joe Biden, but you didn't mention China. Now, I know that you are in touch with most world leaders. Have you any indication from Beijing that they might be willing to join such a mechanism?
I frankly do not know, but of course, I'm aware that China is a very important element in terms of shaping the reset. We need all countries integrated. It's not only the virus which connects us. I think all the other issues, terrorism, poverty, environment, all those issues require at the end global cooperation. Otherwise, we will not be successful.
And obviously, you are a champion of multilateralism, a multi-stakeholder society. With the departure of Donald Trump, as we were just talking about, do you see this now injecting new momentum into a multilateral system, a global multilateral system? And would we return to the traditional multilateralism, do you think? Or is the world on a new path?
I think also here we need a reset. We cannot go back to the system of multilateralism which we have established after World War II. What we need is a reform of the international system. Just think of the WTO. We have to integrate the new dimensions of global trade, like everything which has to do with e-commerce and so on. So definitively, multilateralism will get a boost by the election of President Biden. And I'm very hopeful that we can now create the necessary systems which we need for the 21st century.
Good to talk to you, Professor Schwab. Many thanks for joining us on the Global Conversation.
Thank you very much.